long as people are in compliance with state and local laws on medical marijuana, we're not going to interfere. And I applaud that enormously. That's exactly what they should have done. I'm completely convinced that they will do the same thing with regard to Prop 19. They will probably come out and say, oh, this is silly, oh, you were duped, oh, you're misled, it'll never work, but we're going to let you do it. And then, honestly, it's going to work. It's not going to be wonderful, but it will be less harmful. It will start to work. It will start to bring normalcy back. The Mexican drug cartels will start making less money. Prison or gangs or juvenile gangs will make less money, etc. And the revenues will come in. The quality will be there. So I'm convinced that that's what's going to happen. But understand, Marcus, I was in a room at the Hoover Institute, Stanford University, on 3 separate occasions in which the Hoover Institute sponsored a seminar, a forum for chiefs of police all around the country. And somewhere between 50 and 60 chiefs of police were in the room, and once you closed the doors, once you turned off the microphones, and it's just here talking privately, they would tell you, they pretty much spoke the same way I did. Same thing with my fellow judges. You know, I'd be asked, what do they really think? And I tell you, that's asking 2 questions. What do they think privately? What do they think publicly? Because the chiefs of police will tell you, I understand this, and I agree that I don't want you to arrest my daughter for drug problems, and I wouldn't arrest her either. Bring her to me. That's a parental issue. Bringing her into the criminal justice system is the wrong way to go. But we need political cover. We need political cover because I, as a chief of police, have a real political job, and I have to respond to the mayor and the city council and the editorial board of local papers, and I can't do that. So politicians are really good at one thing. They're good at followership. They'll follow where the votes are. And it's up to us to tell them we demand an honest discussion. We look and see what's going on, the harm we are inflicting upon ourselves, our children, people around the world. We demand an honest discussion. We demand a change. Then they'll get out in front and lead. And I'm convinced that that's where this will go as well. I could be wrong, certainly, but I just cannot believe the Obama administration is going to thumb its nose at the voters of California. And then it will sweep the country because other states will start copying this as well. I think they're lining up to do that already. Yes, in front.
Have law enforcement professionals in California come out? What's been their position on Proposition 19, and have you seen that change in the recent months?
I testified in Sacramento before the League of Cities, which is basically made up of retired law enforcement people, and for one reason or another, they're still pretty hardline on this. They're still, let's get tough, not smart, just tough. So they're going to have to be dragged along. But I also am involved with a group called LEAP, which is Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and this is formed by former police officers, and now there are, I think, 10,000 members in which they're all involved with law enforcement in one way or the other. I came out publicly while I was still a practicing judge, and for 17 years thereafter. Many of them are retired, and they go out and speak about this. Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, it's amazing. If you look back at George Shultz, for example, former Secretary of State under that real liberal Ronald Reagan, by the way, you know, within a couple of weeks he was at the Hoover Institute and was asked, and he told the truth, saying, well, you know, it's something that we should investigate. So it's unfortunate that you have to retire in order to speak the truth. I actually spoke numbers of years ago now, probably 10, 15 years ago, to an American Bar Association seminar in which they brought in the chief justices and justices of the Supreme Courts of various states around the country. And afterwards, and I spoke about them actually for 3 hours. I barely took a breath. There's so much to talk about. But I got a letter from the then presiding justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina. Dear Jim, you know, you're right. I see this coming across my desk all the time. Drug prohibition isn't working, and I see that routinely, but you know, I love my job. I gave up a lucrative law practice to be here. And if I were to speak about this in North Carolina, I couldn't keep my job because I'd spend so much time trying to defend myself. So keep doing this, but I can't join you. Now, why he sent me the letter, I don't know. And since then, he has come out discussing this too, so I can come out and mention him specifically. But I thought to myself at the time, you know, what a tragedy. Here, the people in our country that are in best position to be able to tell the truth, have experience, have credibility, we're intimidating them away from a discussion. And they have to retire before they actually tell the truth. But we're going I will end this part by saying, I guarantee that 2 years after the time that we finally change away from this failed drug policy, literally everybody in the country will put their arms around each other and look back and be astonished that we could have perpetuated such a failed system for so long. Drug prohibition is the biggest policy mess, biggest policy conflict that we have inflicted upon ourselves, sort of slavery, and people will begin to recognize that.
You know, Oscar Wilde once said that if you give a man a mask, he'll tell you the truth. And I wonder if there's a way to give our politicians, our law enforcement, our military, people who are in delicate positions, our judges, a mask, a temporary mask. If you took a non-binding, just a blind straw poll amongst these people, I mean, I shudder to think what kind of result we would get, because they're in the majority, but they're closeted.
I think that's right, and in fact in Congress, it wouldn't surprise me if you could take an anonymous poll, a straw poll, without having to voice your vote, that we would make real progress in Congress. Congress understands that, but again, it's money, and money drives the bus. And there's huge amounts of money in this thing. The bureaucracy, I call it the prison industrial complex. They have a lot of money. Guess who is the strongest lobby group in the state of California today? It is the Prison Guards Union, and that's probably true in pretty much every state around the country. They have a vested interest in keeping those ranks high, which is really obscene if you think about it, to change someone's liberty for their economic reliability. It's something that I don't hold it against them. That's our system, to speak up for your own economic self-interest. But what an amazing thing to be doing. There must be other questions, too.
I have another one.
We're doing okay.
Hi, I'm Coletta Youngers with the Washington office on Latin America. I'm actually more involved in promoting drug law reform in Latin America. But one of the issues that we're looking at is alternatives to incarceration, and I understand that you're proposing something very different. But my question is, in terms of your experience as a judge, you know, what is your impression of drug courts, other alternatives to incarceration as sort of a way of dealing with the laws that we have in a more productive way?
Well, I do believe in alternatives to incarceration, and I'm sorry that you inferred that from my comments that I wouldn't. I would change the system so that we wouldn't have so many people coming into the criminal justice system, because they shouldn't be there. And Prop 36 in California, which passed, my goodness, 6 years ago, I think now or so, diverts people, users out of the system. Very good thing. A lot of people that are there, honestly, I mean, I've never used marijuana or any illicit drug, by the way, and you could give them away on the street corner, bless them by every religious leader in town, and I'm still not going to jam cocaine up my nose. And I'm not going to use marijuana unless maybe my medical doctor recommends it to me for some medical problem. But nevertheless, a lot of people that make that choice are not harmful. They're not hurting anyone at all except maybe themselves. So they should not be in the criminal justice system anyway. And Proposition 36 diverts them, and that's good. But there's a major problem with Prop 36, and that is it's not intended to address the real problem user, the people that are drug addicted, because there are just not enough teeth in that. So the problem is that they'll come into the system, they'll be kicked out and sent into a kind of a toothless program. So they come in a second time, again they're kicked out, and by the third or the fourth time, the judges are going to get tired of them and give up on them and sentence them to jail or prison a lot longer than they would have originally. So what they need to do instead is go to drug court. Totally different animal, and I'm proud to say that I probably put in the first drug court in the United States of America back in 1984. We screened out incoming alcohol abusers or alcohol users, and if those people were alcoholics, we'd put them into a drug court that's basically the same thing that's going on now, take them off alcohol, etc. Drug courts work. They are a positive revolution in our justice system, and I've seen this as a judge. Why? Because they require judges to treat people as people. Same thing with prosecutors, police officers. You treat people as people. And that doesn't mean they're not held accountable. Accountability is key. And I'd look at people in my drug court for alcohol and say, you know, if you even eat rum cake and I find out about it, I'm going to put you in jail. And, you know, they'd laugh at me, and then they'd find out that I meant it. You know, if you do this, I'll give you a choice. You always need to have a choice. On my alcohol calendar, I'd say, you know, you used alcohol. Yes, yes. You admit the violation. Yes. Okay, I'll give you a choice. I'll either put you in jail for 90 days and take away your driver's license for 6 months, or I'll put you in jail for 10 days and put you back on the program. Which do you prefer? Now, honestly, just amongst us here, I know this is a very private discussion, I would try to weight the scales so they'd go back into the treatment program because it works. But they have to have a choice. And I would get letters from people. Dear Judge Gray, I was going to divorce my husband. I couldn't trust him. He'd get drunk. He'd beat me up. He'd beat up the kids. He was unreliable. I was going to divorce him, but now that he's off alcohol, he's the man I married. Thank you. You've given me my husband back. You've given the father of my children back to my children. Thank you. How many letters like that do you need before you figure out we're on the right path here? So jail is a really good tool. Short amounts of jail time is important to use to keep people going in the right direction. So I honestly believe in those, but you've got to make that distinction, fundamental distinction, hold people accountable for what they put for their actions, not what they put into their bodies. So I think you and I are in accord.
That's a great note to close on.